Why do things happen? I mean, really, have you ever just stopped to think about that? It's the question behind everything, right? From why a company succeeds to why a friendship starts, this hunt for cause and effect, well, it's one of the oldest stories we've ever told ourselves. And you see one side of this story everywhere you look. You see order just appearing out of nowhere. Simple little rules suddenly creating these unbelievably complex patterns. But why? What's the force that makes things fall together?
But then again, we know the flip side is just as true. We've all seen it. Systems break down, empires crumble, things that felt so solid just dissolve. So what about that? Why do things fall apart?
Okay, so here's the thing. The answers to those two questions, they don't just explain the world around us, they reveal this epic battle for the fate of the entire universe. And maybe even more interesting, they expose a really critical flaw in how our own minds try to make sense of it all. So yeah, let's get into it.
All right, let's start with the optimistic side of the coin, the creative force. This absolutely incredible process where amazing complexity seems to spring out of total simplicity.
The name for this magic trick is emergence. It's what happens when a whole system, think of a huge flock of starlings or a buzzing city, starts showing off properties that none of its individual parts have. You know, Aristotle was talking about this thousands of years ago when he said, the whole is something besides the parts. He was onto something big.
The physicist P.W. Anderson put a modern spin on it. Just 3 words. More is different. And that just nails it, doesn't it? The idea isn't just that you have more pieces. It's that once you hit a certain number of pieces, the whole system just transforms into something brand new. Quantity literally becomes quality.
So how do we even see this happening? Well, there's a concept called coarse graining. Imagine you're standing with your nose pressed up against a giant TV screen. All you see are individual pixels, red, green, blue, total chaos. But when you step back, when you coarse grain by just ignoring all those tiny details, suddenly an image pops out, a face, a landscape. That's emergence. You're finally seeing the forest instead of just the trees.
And here's the part that'll really bake your noodle. You don't need some master plan. There's no puppet master pulling the strings. All it takes are simple, local interactions. Think about fireflies in a meadow at dusk. There's no conductor telling them, okay, flash on 3. Each one just reacts to the flashes of its immediate neighbors. And out of those thousands of simple, local decisions, this breathtaking, unified, pulsing light show just happens. It emerges.
And listen, this isn't just some neat nature fact. It has huge, real-world consequences. Take herd immunity. That is a perfect example of emergence. One person getting a vaccine protects. Well, one person. That's a simple, local action. But when enough people do it, all those little individual firewalls combine to create something entirely new, a collective shield. A shield that protects the entire community, even people who couldn't get the shot. The protection of the herd is a property that no single vaccine could ever have on its own. It's a superpower we build together.
But, and this is a really big but, for all its incredible creative power, emergence isn't the only game in town. In fact, you could say it's fighting a constant, uphill, and ultimately losing battle. Yep, the story is about to take a much darker turn.
You see, according to the fundamental laws of thermodynamics, reality isn't this beautiful garden where things just grow and flourish. No, it's more like we, and literally everything else, are nothing more than cups destined to shatter endlessly through time. Whew.
And these aren't just theories. They're like the ironclad rules of the cosmos. Rule 1, energy is conserved. You can't make it, you can't destroy it, you can only change its shape. Rule 2, and this is the big one for our story, is entropy. It's the law that says things always move from order to disorder. It's why your coffee gets cold and never just heats itself back up. It is the universe's one-way street toward messiness. Things fall apart. And Rule 3 says the end of that road is absolute zero, a state of maximum chaos where nothing can happen, ever again.
So the grim takeaway here? The ultimate unstoppable direction of the entire universe is toward disorder, decay, and eventually total annihilation. From this point of view, any kind of order, a star, a planet, a living thing, it's just a temporary fluke, a brief, beautiful little protest on an irreversible slide into nothing.
So, we've got these two massive cosmic forces, right? One that builds things up and one that relentlessly tears them down. But how do we fit into this? How do our little human brains make sense of this tug of war? Well, this is where we have to turn the camera around and look at a funny little glitch in our own thinking.
It's got a formal name, hindsight bias, but you and I and everyone we know call it the knew-it-all-along effect. It's that powerful, nagging feeling you get when you look back at something totally surprising and convince yourself, oh yeah, that was totally obvious. I saw that coming a mile away.
We do this all the time. Let me tell you about John. He is completely blindsided when Jane breaks up with him. Totally shocked. But the next day, suddenly, his memory is flooded with all these obvious signs he supposedly missed. That time she canceled plans, that weird look she gave him. He literally rewrites his own past and tells himself, of course, I knew it all along, when in reality, he had absolutely no clue.
And this really shows the trick our mind plays on us. Before something happens, the future is a fog. It's pure uncertainty. There are a million possible paths, a million confusing signals. But the second it's over, our brain cleans it all up. It collapses all that messy possibility into one single, neat and tidy story. Uncertainty becomes inevitability, ambiguous clues become obvious signs.
And this brings us right back to that cosmic battle. Our brains are story machines, and they hate loose ends. So when some beautiful, complex system emerges out of nowhere, we look back and say, well, of course that happened. It was inevitable. And when a system finally succumbs to entropy and falls apart, we nod sagely and say, well, of course it failed. It was doomed from the start. Hindsight bias makes both the miracle of creation and the tragedy of decay seem like a simple, predictable story we should have seen coming.
So, where are we then? We seem to be caught between a universe that builds and a universe that destroys, all while using a brain that's not great at seeing either one clearly. So how in the world are we supposed to find any meaning in all this chaos?
Well, I think the key is to try and hold all three ideas in your head at the same time. Think of them as three different lenses to view reality. You've got emergence, simple things coming together to create complex new things. You've got entropy, that unstoppable slide towards disorder. And then you've got hindsight bias, our own mental habit of cleaning up the messy past and making it all seem obvious.
And here's the real punchline. Understanding these huge cosmic forces is one thing, but understanding our own limitations and seeing them clearly, that's the real prize. It's not about picking a team, optimism or pessimism. It's about getting a richer, more nuanced, and frankly, a more humble way of looking at the world and our tiny little place in it.
Which really just leaves us with one last massive question. If it's true that the universe is building itself up with one hand while tearing itself down with the other, and if we know our own minds are going to try and oversimplify that story, then what do we do? How do we choose to act? What do we decide is worth building, knowing it can't last? What do we fight to hold together, even if it's just for a little while?